Imagine a promise of freedom, something you feel you've earned through incredible sacrifice, just to have it replaced by brutal repression. Well, that's exactly what happened in the Indian subcontinent in just 6 short years between 1914 and 1920. This is the story of how wartime hope completely curdled into widespread outrage and how it totally reshaped the fight for independence.
So, to really get a grip on this dramatic shift, we're going to follow a clear chain of events. We'll start with the high hopes during World War I, then look at a brief but really powerful moment of unity. From there, we'll see the British actions that just ignited anger, led to a terrible tragedy, and finally sparked a massive nationwide resistance.
All right, let's set the scene. World War I is tearing Europe apart, and India throws everything it has into the British war effort. We're talking more than 1 million soldiers, plus huge amounts of money and resources. So naturally, there was this widespread belief, this real expectation, that in return for all this loyalty and sacrifice, Britain would grant India a major step towards self-government. It seemed like a fair trade.
And just look at how quickly things escalated. You've got this hopeful support during the war, which leads to this amazing surge of Indian political unity in 1916. But then, just 3 years later, 1919, becomes this absolute turning point of betrayal, and that directly sparks the massive protest movement of 1920. You can see how each step is a direct reaction to the one that came before it.
Okay, let's zoom in on that moment of unity in 1916. This was a really pivotal event that showed the British the potential power of a united India. I'm talking about the Lucknow Pact. So, what was the Lucknow Pact? Well, it was genuinely historic. Because for the first time ever, the two major and often rival political parties, the Muslim League and the Congress, actually put their differences aside. They agreed on a single set of demands for self-government, sending this incredibly powerful, united message to the British.
You really can't overstate how significant this pact was. It was just a masterclass in political unity, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah played a huge role here, acting as an ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. Strategically, the Muslim League knew that an alliance would make its voice much stronger, and the result? One powerful list of demands for reform that the British just couldn't ignore.
So how did the British respond to this newfound unity? Well, instead of rewarding India for its wartime loyalty with any meaningful reform, they delivered this confusing and frankly infuriating mix of tiny concessions and incredibly harsh new laws. First up were the Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms. They introduced this complicated system called diarchy, which basically means dual government. Think of it like this. Indian ministers got control over less important stuff like education and health. But the British governors kept full control over all the really important things, like the money and the police. So yeah, it was a little taste of power, but a very limited and frustrating one.
But then, almost right after, came the real shocker, the Rowlatt Act of 1919. This law gave the government these sweeping powers to arrest and jail anyone they suspected of sedition, without even giving them a trial. It was a complete shutdown of basic human rights, and it felt like an absolute betrayal.
And this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one hand, you have this small, pretty unsatisfying promise of reform, and on the other, the crushing reality of repression. It was this massive gap between the promise and the reality that basically lit the fuse for all the anger that exploded across the subcontinent.
All that intense anger against the Rowlatt Act just boiled over into protests all over the country. And this led directly to one of the most tragic and infamous events in the entire history of British India, the Amritsar Massacre.
So picture this. It's a large public garden, Jallianwala Bagh, in the city of Amritsar. Thousands of people, including women and children, had gathered for a totally peaceful, non-violent demonstration against this new repressive law. The tragic thing is, most of them had no idea that public gatherings had just been banned. The brutality of what happened next is just staggering. The British officer in charge, General Dyer, blocked the only main exit to the garden. Then, with absolutely no warning, he ordered his soldiers to fire directly into the dense, unarmed crowd. The shooting went on for about 10 minutes, and it only stopped when they were about to run out of ammunition. The Amritsar Massacre. It was so much more than a tragedy. It was the point of no return. It just shattered any faith that might have been left in British justice. For so many Indians, the idea of cooperating with the British was just off the table. The only path forward now was direct opposition.
So you've got this perfect storm of broken promises, the hated Rowlatt Act, and the pure horror of Amritsar,
All of this came together and sparked a brand new strategy for the independence struggle, a nationwide movement that would pull in millions of ordinary people.
And this was the non-cooperation movement, which kicked off in 1920. The idea, led by Mahatma Gandhi, was revolutionary in its simplicity. If Indians just refused to cooperate with the British administration, the whole system would collapse. The goal was to paralyze the government, not with violence, but through massive, peaceful civil disobedience.
So what did this actually look like for everyday people? Well, it was like a society-wide shutdown. Students walked out of British-run schools. Lawyers just abandoned the colonial courts. People boycotted British goods and started using local products instead. It was a call for absolutely everyone, from all walks of life, to peacefully pull their support from the colonial system.
And then, this already massive movement got even more powerful by joining forces with the Khilafat movement. You see, Indian Muslims were deeply worried that the British would dismantle the Ottoman Empire after the war, which threatened the position of the Caliph and the safety of holy sites. This alliance created a huge, unified front of Hindu-Muslim protest that really shook the foundations of British rule.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Let's tie all of this together and see how this incredible chain of events from 1914 to 1920 just completely changed the game for the independence movement.
You can literally draw a straight line from one event to the next. The unity of the Lucknow Pact was met with the betrayal of 1919. That betrayal then ignited the mass resistance of the non-cooperation movement. And the ultimate outcome? A massive shift in the end goal. The conversation was no longer about getting a little more self-rule inside the British Empire. It was now about complete independence from it.
Just so you know, this entire breakdown was put together using information from a bunch of standard revision guides and notes for O-Levels Pakistan studies, so you can be confident that all of this lines up with what you need to know for your exams.
And we're going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Just imagine for a second that the British had responded differently after the war. What if they had actually rewarded India's loyalty with real, genuine steps towards self-government? How might the entire story of independence have played out? It's definitely something to think about.
Hey, if you found this breakdown helpful for your revision, please do us a favor and give this explainer a like. And make sure you subscribe to Spotwork Learning for more clear, focused guides to help you ace your studies. Thanks for watching.